or two ago. I want to point out to you that the information in this is going to be from January 1st of 21 to November, I believe it was November 8th of 21. So it's year to date. We have had a situation, in fact, it was November 9th. We've had we're in the midst of a transition from the Uniform Crime Report to the NIBRS Crime Report, the National Incident-Based Reporting System. That's something that's being dictated by the FBI and by Department of Justice, and also by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. The Florida version is called FIBRS, Florida Incident-Based Reporting System. So we just converted to that the beginning of this year, and we are, and in fact, we're unable to pull up UCR at this point because our system has been converted to the NIBRS. So we don't have the remainder of that data for the 21 year. But what I can do is go through and show you what the year to date is for that, for up to November 9th, and be more than happy to answer the questions that I can that you may have reference some of the material. First off, when you look at the homicides here, it shows comparatively up to year to date, you see that in 20, we had 6 up through November 9th, and 20. In 21, we had 5. Now, those numbers changed, and I can give you the up-to-date numbers for both of those. In 20, for the calendar year, we had 10 total homicides. And based on the information I have now, the total homicides for 21 is 8. So we had a total of 8 total homicides in 21, which gives us a 20% reduction. When you look at the other violent crime, you notice that this shows that all those areas such as rape, robbery, and aggravated assault, they all increased during that time period. And we had an overall total increase in violent crime of 14.38. That's year to date on November 9th. Now those numbers have changed, and they will be reflected in the report that we prepare for you in the future. The next thing I like to highlight, if you take a look at the property crimes, you'll see that property crime, the total reduction for property crimes is 16.3%. Now, property crimes typically are more numerous than person crimes, so they tend to pull the overall crime rate down. When you look at the overall year-to-date, January through November 9th, you'll see that we had a 10.44% reduction in overall crime. But the trouble for us, or the troubling point for us, the emphasis for us, is trying to reduce the amount of violent crime, and that's where most of our efforts are being focused at today. The next slide.
Chief Scott.
Yes, ma'am.
Captain Anthony Ferrara has his hand up to speak about the UCR, sir.
All right, go ahead, Anthony.
Chief, just in light of making sure that we were accurate, there were 9 homicides. The last one was the last day of the year. That's probably why it didn't show up. And that was the Miss Wilkes was the individual involved in that, and that was domestic related. So there's actually 9.
Okay. So with the 9, that means we had a 10% reduction. When you look at the next slide, again, the next slide is going to show you comparatively what the stats were up for the year, and then for 2021, it was year to date at that point. But as we've just informed that the total homicides for 21 were 9 compared to the 10 that we had in 20. That's a 10% reduction in homicides. But you note that in 2019, you had a total of 3. And we can't exactly measure the impact of COVID, but I would venture to say that COVID had something to do with the change in numbers. particularly when we started to come out of COVID, and you saw some things loosen up, and now you see that they're getting tight again. You note that the person shot, that increased as well to 50, and that was as of November 9th. And the shots fired are 448. So we're a little down from where we were year to date with the number of shots fired. But when you look at overall, as far as the violent crime and the gun violence, it seems to be picking up with the person shot. Because I think it's up to 51 per person shot, and the crimes, the total shots fired was 448 year to date. Again, these numbers I know have changed because we don't have the final tally, but that's what we had as of November 9th. The next slide, this shows some of the use of firearm incidents that we've had throughout the city. The Swamp Car Wash, 912 East University Avenue, that shows the victims there. Also shows, again, the total and what's missing from these is the one that Captain Farrar just pointed out that occurred on the last day of the year. And that changes these numbers. And most of these, I think, have been reviewed. You saw the 13-year-old boy that was killed June 24th, as well as the person that was killed on July 18th. On August 1st, 3 people, including a juvenile, were injured in a shooting about 2 a.m. at 50 Southwest 1st Street. August 7th, 2 men were hit in a drive-by style shooting, 1900 Southeast 4th Street. And we had another person injured in a shooting, 1000 Southwest 62nd Boulevard in the Pavilion Apartments. September 5th, 2 a.m., we had a man that died after multiple gunshot wounds at 238 West University Avenue. And October 12th, we had 2 groups that fired several shots in the Northeast Waldo, Northeast 16th Avenue area. And we had a woman that was hit that was standing in the area of the Green Apple store. She survived. And we had a report around November 22nd at 9:30 p.m. Officers were called to 2000 Southeast 3rd Terrace, where a victim had been shot and killed. The next slide this gets more into some of the causes. We talked about what happened. Now, why is this stuff happening? You can see that you look at the ages and look at the people that are involved in this. Overwhelmingly, it's Black males that are involved in it. You have the age group of 1 to 19. They are 49%, 49.5% of the homicides. And when you look at the age 20 to 24, they're 49.7%. And the age group 25 to 34, 35.5%. And again, it shows that one of the primary causes of death for young Black men is homicide. The next slide would like to reflect that, again, on a national level, that violence has been driven by firearms mostly, and that nearly 77% of the murders being committed were committed with some sort of gun, some type of firearm. We're just looking at Gainesville itself, 100% of the homicides were committed with firearms in 2021. I believe that was as of that day. I think there's one that wasn't, it may have been an infant. Am I correct in that, Captain Ferrara?
Yes, that's correct. Unfortunately, those were caused by by physical force, not by firearm.
Okay, so there's one so that slide isn't correct at this point. This was done as of that date, and then we had homicide occur later after that date. So that's not 100%. It's going to be more like 90. You have 85% of the offenders of homicides were Black, 15% were white. That's 85% of the offenders of homicide. 71% of the victims of homicides were Black, and 29% were white. So this slide illustrates that Blacks are more often the perpetrators and the victims of homicide in Gainesville. Again,
Actually, AC Scott, can I just
Yeah.
say one thing?
Yes.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's also the discrepancy that the white offender and the white victim, that event was caused by a knife, not by a firearm.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that, Anthony. The next slide deals with the National Survey of Children. You're talking about the motivation, and we look at the National Survey of Children and their exposure to violence and victimization. All this ties into the crimes of homicide and child abuse and neglect, and shows that 60% of the children from birth to 17 years experience victimization, and 38% witness violence sometime during their childhood. Evidence also suggests that youth of color, ages 12 to 19, are the victims of violent crime at a significantly higher rate than other peers. Youth of color are 3 times more likely to be victims of reported child abuse or neglect, and 3 times more likely to be victims of robbery, and 5 times more likely to be victims of homicide. Homicide is the leading cause of death among African American youth, 15 to 24. Also, the youth exposure to victimization is directly linked to negative outcomes for young folks, including increased depression, substance abuse, risky sexual behavior, homelessness, and poor school performance. The victimization increases the odds of becoming a perpetrator of violent crimes, including felony assault and intimate partner violence, doubles the likelihood of problematic drug use, and increases the odds of committing property crime. Youth that have been exposed to 7 to 9 acts of violence were at least 3 times as likely as youth with no exposure to engage in risky behavior. I guess the analysis of this is that, the people that are victimized eventually become the people that victimize other folks, and that we have to get in. If we're going to try to solve the problem, we have to start with our youth and trying to make sure that they're being treated in a safe environment and assisted as much as we can as youth before they get to the point where it's too late for them. Exposure to gun violence is the next slide, and this kind of shows again that the effects of that, you have to deal with the post-traumatic stress disorder, the antisocial behavior, the depression, impeded cognitive and emotional development, risky alcohol and substance abuse, high rates of chronic disease, and increased likelihood of engaging in violence. What's not here is that or just in a simpler term, a lot of this comes about because folks are afraid of their environment and some of the factors in their environment. And sometimes it's a result of being bullied. Sometimes it's a result of just the surroundings that they have grown up in, and the other factors that we talked about where they were victimized. And sometimes it's just they get to the point where they arm themselves with guns, and they haven't been taught how to resolve conflict without violence. The next slide kind of gives us an illustration of the cycle of violence. The under-resourced neighborhoods, typically those are the ones that are preeminent in community gun violence. And then as a result of that, you have a reduction in economic opportunity and social cohesion. And so that cycle keeps feeding itself. The reduction in economic opportunity causes underserved, resource neighborhoods. And again, community gun violence. It's a continuing cycle. So the question is, we tell you, where we stand right now as far as the stats. what we think some of the motivations are. And one of the things we didn't touch upon, just the overall social economic component of this, add in some of the psychological impacts of COVID and psychological impacts of environment. And, it's what are we going to do about it? What are we doing about it now? So several months ago, we got together and we started an initiative. We end up calling it the One Community Initiative. And the concept there is that we think we lose the battle right off the bat when we enter a situation and that we identify a problem as a police problem. The police are only one part of the community. And I think some folks are touching upon this across the nation is that the police department is not going to solve that problem. They can't solve gun violence problem without all of the community being involved. And so we came up with the concept of one community, trying to remove the division lines that exist. You want to conquer anything, the first thing you do is divide it. And we, unfortunately, in our country today, we're very divided. And we realize to be successful, we have to be united. We have to look at the things that we hold common and work toward that. And so what we came up with the one community concept, which says that we need everyone to assist in not only identifying the problem, but also coming up with an action plan to address the problems. And that means that we're listening to one another. We're listening to all of the community to identify and to come up with the action plan. So it's imperative that all the community be involved. So, Chief Jones authorized us to go out and start moving this thing along. We went back to some of the core principles of procedural justice and just trying to make sure that we had that trust and legitimacy established in the community. And so we started to reach out to different groups, and to get that trust and legitimacy, we realized that we had to communicate effectively with all segments of our community. And so we reached out to ministers, we reached out to teachers, we reached out to business folk, we reached out to other social organizations, to the medical community. We reached out to the Children's Trust and been talking with Colin, Children's Trust, about the things that we can do. We didn't want to get in a situation where we were just talking about things and we didn't have any actionable items. We wanted to bring resources to bear, and with our partners, we're able to do that. So going to the next slide, and this one is going to be about, I'm going to go past the trust and legitimacy and go to the next slide. And invest in prevention and intervention. Violent crime, as we said earlier, is not a crime that we can, that law enforcement can resolve by itself. The causes, we touched upon that earlier. Parents, some lack the resources, some lack the skill, some even lack the desire. But we have to have resources and work with parents to try to provide for the safety of their kids. We have to teach these folks that there's another way to resolve conflict other than with a gun. We have to provide access to, or work with our partners to provide access to employment, to health services, be it mental and or physical, to deal with some of the basics such as getting food and shelter. So we put together a conglomerate of resources and different partners that can address those items. Now, the police department can't do it, but we can be a hub and can be a conduit to help guide people to the folks that can do this thing. And that's been our primary goal in trying to invest in the prevention and intervention. So it's one thing to get to a crime after it's occurred. It's another to get there on the front end and to deal with the prevention and intervention to try to stop the people who are committing these crimes from committing these crimes and give them alternatives, viable alternatives, to be successful and trying to get parents to see the common goal of keeping their children and their families safe. The next slide just kind of gets into, the detecting and interrupt potential violent conflicts. And we have this program where we train, and we're still onboarding some of these folks. We're training folks that are from these communities, some folks who've had some issues in the past that are willing to go out and try to assist others in preventing them from repeating some of the mistakes that they made, and really to try to intercede in these violent conflicts before they become violent. And so we're training these outreach workers to prevent shootings and identify and mediate potentially lethal conflicts. They're out there with their ear to the community. They're a resource to people in the community, a resource that does not wear a gun. They're a resource that people in the community might be familiar with and be more comfortable with. Again, we wanted to reach out as best we could to every segment of the community. So whenever we have situations where there might be a shooting that occurred and typically there's some type of retaliation that might be planned, well, we're trying to get our outreach people to intercede and try to cool the heads down and the emotions down. And so they work with the victims and the friends and the family and try to really put an end to the cycle of violence. They also mediate conflicts. So when there's a disagreement that might exist that could result in violence, these outreach, these interrupters intercede. And again, their goal is to try to keep everyone cool, to work with with folks that have conflicts, and to offer them an alternative to the violence to address those conflicts. The next slide is identify and treat highest risk. Again, we're talking about training folks, culturally appropriate outreach workers who they reach out, and it's high risk stuff. They're talking to these folks. They're dealing with people who are sometimes very emotional and may not necessarily be rational, and trying to help them out with giving them an avenue to obtain social services that they might need, and things like job training, drug treatment. They're reaching out and just trying to make sure that we provide some alternatives, to people that might be prone to violence. These folks will also assess the highest risk workers, utilize the trust and high risk, and really become familiar with folks. And they have to have their finger on the pulse. If they have the finger on the pulse, then they can keep up with what's going on in the community and help direct folks to services that might assist them in the future, such as drug treatment and employment. The next slide talks about the strategic enforcement efforts. So on the one hand, we're trying to prevent this activity from occurring. We're trying to intervene with the people that might be perpetrators. Years ago, we were taught what they call a crime triangle. In the crime triangle, you have three components that you have to have a crime. You have to have the victim, you have to have the perpetrator, and you have to have the location. And so our approach strategically is we just tried to deal with the perpetrator before they became perpetrators. And the other part is educating the public and also dealing with the location. So sometimes that strategic approach might be to increase the presence of police officers in certain locations, taking proactive measures to quickly respond to people who are actively engaged in criminal activity and try to negate their impact on the community. One thing that we like to do is to try to make sure that we're responsive to the community. And you'll see that our next slide talks about the mobility of the community to change the norms. As we pointed out, And next slide, Deborah, please. As we pointed out, we can't do this alone. We need people in the community. And I'm proud to say that we've engaged with what's known now. It was the assurance group, is known as the One Community Group. We partnered with the Sheriff's Office, with the State Attorney's Office, with local ministers, Pastor Herring of Day Springs, you have Bishop Stokes, you have Superintendent Feathers, and we're reaching out to other pastors. We're reaching out to other businesses. We have the school board members, Dr. McNeely and Ms. Certain. These folks are actively involved in coming up with a solution. We put on the play of Who's in the Box, and that was something that dramatizes the impact of what happens with gun violence, the impact on both the perpetrator and on the victim, and the consequences of those actions. And we appeal to the youth, and we know that they understood because they relayed that information back to us. And we had a very successful event. It's something that we have at this point videotaped, and we're working through editing that. Our goal is to take that presentation and go out into the community to make it available to schools, churches, any organization where we have kids that we can appeal to try to educate them on alternatives. And we didn't just give them a presentation, but we also presented them with resources for education, for employment. We gave them resources for help. We tried to appeal to them that our job was to try to help them be successful. We were trying to get them to the point where we could provide them alternative to living a more productive life and alternative to the violence. We also, and again, this is something Chief Jones started, was a violent crime work group. In that group, again, because we think what's center and what's most important for us is communicating and partnering with our neighbors. And to do that, to be successful, we have to talk to our neighbors and communicate with our neighbors. And we need our neighbors to talk and communicate with us. We've initiated several programs, the Neighborhood Police Initiative, where we train officers and neighbors in the same training, train them on how to identify problems in the neighborhood collaboratively and how to collaboratively develop an action plan. Because every community should be able to tell us what they want done and to work with us on identifying the problems in the community and then come up with solutions. But we need to have our neighbors actively involved. And so one of the components that Chief Jones came up with was the violent crime work group. In that group, it will be made up of community neighbors and businesses. The work group will review progress on our strategy and make recommendations on how the efforts to reduce gun violence could be enhanced. The work group would also assist in identifying some of the underlying causes of violence in our community and suggestions in addressing them. The mission is to curb violence, to reduce the growing number of homicides and shootings in the city, and to develop specific community-wide steps citizens and leaders can take to make their community safer. Also to mobilize the community, to create the advocacy and awareness with purposing and advocating for legislation and policy-related changes necessary to promote a safer community for all residents. I know some of the things that we looked at was maybe trying to enhance some of the penalties for folks that leave their guns in an unlocked, unsecured car. Leave it unlocked and have a gun there. And those guns are typically taken from the cars and used to commit crimes, and some of those are homicides. We also looked at intervention and prevention with the work group, creating parental support, intervention and prevention, again, we want to be an asset and identify assets that are out there in the community. And one thing that we found out in reviewing what we do and how we do it is there are a lot of resources that are out there, but sometimes our community, our neighbors aren't quite sure how to access those. And so we want to try to deal with that schism and make it something that's more accessible to the community to know what resources out there and then how to gain access to them. The next slide talks about our homicide clearance rate. For the nation in 2020, the United States had a clearance rate for homicides, murder and manslaughter, 54.4%. And that's like the highest crime clearance rate in the United States for homicides. In Gainesville in 2020, our clearance rate was 100%. We had 100% of the homicides that were committed in 2020. We cleared it by arrest, and we were really proud that we cleared those cases, which exceeded the national average. I'm very proud of the accomplishments. Captain Anthony Ferrara was in charge of the investigative bureau at that time, and now that's being championed by Captain Paris Owens. The next slide, and I'll try to go through these quickly, deals with stolen guns, and that's what we were talking about a couple minutes ago, stolen firearms. It showed you just for the week of December 2nd through December 16th that we had 3 firearms stolen, 171 total for the year through January, from January 2nd to December 16th, there were 171. When you look at the weapons seized, and weapons could be knives, sticks, anything, but something that was used that could be used for a crime, we seized 8 weapons, and there were a total of 174 for the year. Firearms seized by law enforcement, we had 14 that were seized for the week of December 2nd, or the period from December 2nd to December 16th. Total was 338 for the year. Number of shots fired incidents, we had 3 that were identified from that period from the 2nd to the 16th in that 2-week period. For the year, we had 116. And these are verified incidents of shots fired. We get calls of shots fired, but oftentimes some of those calls are not actually gunshots. Sometimes it's fireworks or some other loud noise. But what you see here are those number of incidents that we were able to verify by either finding shell casings or eyewitnesses or something to that effect. The number of persons shot or injured by a gunfire, we had 1 for the week of December, a 2-week period from December 2nd and 16th. And we had a total of 51 from January 2nd to December 16th. And number of homicides, you saw that changed. It went from 1 for that week of December 2nd to December 16th to 7. And that really changed to 9 by the end of the year. This is a slide just to give you some idea of what our staffing is. Currently, we have 31 vacant positions for police officer. And that is not counting the civilian personnel vacancies. I think when you add that in, it may double that number. But we have 31 vacancies right now. We have 1 certified person that we have job offers out to, and 2 non-certified. Certified are people who already have police standards, and we just have to take them through field training. Non-certified are people that need to go through the police academy. The accepted job offers were 1 for the certified and 2 for the non-certified. We have 3 people out on military leave at this time. I think that's everything I have for you. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. Again, these numbers are going to change, and we'll finalize that when we get a chance to get the reporting system in sync and be prepared for future meetings.
Are there any questions for Chief Scott? If not, thank you, Chief Scott. We appreciate that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Nice to see you and look forward to working with you in the future.
Same to you, sir. Next up, we have our senior crime analysis, Ms. Bridget Spark.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. How are you doing, ma'am?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
Good. Deborah, do you have it for me? I look like she has it there, but it's not coming up.
Yeah, I have it up. Are you able to see it on your end yet?
No, I don't see it yet. I just see a list of files.
Let me try it a different way. Hold on one moment, please.
Okay.
How about now, Miss Bridget?
Nope, I still don't see it, but I can, if I have it on my screen, so if I can just tell you to go to the next slide, that would be fine.
Okay, hold on.
Okay. Can anyone else see the presentation?
I'm saying the same thing you're saying.
Okay, okay,
No, we're not seeing anything.
okay.
There we
There we are.
Okay.
Okay, so as mentioned previously, my name is Bridget Smart. I'm a certified crime and intelligence analyst here at the Gainesville Police Department. Was recently promoted to be a senior analyst in October of last year. So I currently host the Juvenile Auto Burglary, Auto Theft Suppression meeting. And so just a few pieces of information in reference to myself. I have a criminal justice and behavior analysis bachelor's degree from Savannah State University, where I also have my public administration and nonprofit organizational leadership master's degree. I have 11 years of law enforcement between the two agencies of Savannah Police Department and the Gainesville Police Department. A few of my special assignments is the Income Violence Initiative, the Drug Market Intervention, the Gang Task Force, Progress Gainesville, and most recently, the Juvenile Auto Burglary and Auto Theft Suppression meeting with the Gainesville Police Department. So in the latter part of 2018, we noticed that there was an increase of conveyance burglaries and stolen vehicles. So it was 42% increase for conveyance burglaries and 18% increase for stolen vehicles. And we noticed, based on the statistical analysis that was completed, that majority of them were being done by juveniles in our surrounding areas. So in efforts to decrease our tough on two crimes, which were the conveyance burglaries and stolen vehicles, we focused on juvenile offenders. So as you can see the numbers in 2017, we had a 44% increase from 673 to 957 offenses. And then for stolen vehicles, we had 206 for 2017, and we went up to 256 in 2018, which provided an increase of 18%. So JBAS is a collaborative effort between us and other organizations within our community. We have public school systems that assist us, the SHEP office with Alachua County, the state's attorney's office, AMI Kids, which is an alternative school in the area, the BOLD program, which is a part of GPD. Then we have the Florida Department of Juvenile Justice Probation, Circuit 8 for the county, are also our school resource officers. We have our HEROES program over the summer. Juveniles actually attend or refer over from JBAS. And then we had the development corporation called Project Connect, which is some type of alternative provided for the Department of Juvenile Justice. Then, of course, we have Record House, which is also entities of GPD. So here we are, a few pictures from the BOLD program, and the Record House Youth Academy just shows some of the juveniles that were referred or that are a part of these programs that may make it to the JBATS list. We do have a priority list. That list is based on juveniles who have committed these two offenses. And not only do we observe these juveniles in their community, we also try to see what we can do and provide services for them in addition to any type of crime that they may have committed. We work with their probation officer to find some type of social needs that they may have in their household. So the first picture on the left, we had 3 juveniles that were a part of BOLD. They were accepted in Knoxville College. And then on the right-hand side, the juveniles from the Youth Academy Record House visit the Civil Rights Museum. So the Florida Department of Juvenile Justice, they assist us in different dynamics. They provide us, because I go to court on Wednesdays. I used to go to court before COVID, and I used to be with the juvenile probation officers. And when you go to the courtroom, you actually see their family dynamics. You see what you don't see as a officer or in a law enforcement capacity. Sometimes, like before I started going to the courtroom, I just knew the juveniles by name and their offenses. Didn't know their social status with their families, what type of needs, what type of any type of attention that they may require that can decrease the amount of crime that they actually committed. So by being a part of the Florida Department of Juvenile Justice, being a part of this effort, we saw the family dynamic, got the court information, the juvenile station, the juvenile detention status, any type of needs that they may need educationally or vocationally. And then we also did a lot of follow-up with these juveniles in their household, confirming their address. And we also did juvenile curfew checks, which a probation officer can submit a juvenile that they feel need attention after they get off of work. Our officers will still go and do a juvenile check on them before 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. at night. And so as you can see, this information was provided by Chief Massey from the Department of Juvenile Justice, Probation Officers for Circuit 8. He shows how JBATS aligns with them, that we provide a effective prevention and intervention service. Like I said, we do the juvenile curfew checks, which extends further than their hours. Also that we have with any type of education, because the Record House offers tutoring for juveniles that attend their academy. Then we also provide some type of, we work as a community together, and we try to turn the youth around from every aspect possible. And they feel that they have a seat at the table with us. They can voice their opinions with us in any type of services that we offer to assist them with their juvenile. So these are a few of the numbers that we had after our first year of JBATS. We track the results and efforts. They are measured by crime statistical data that includes numbers from the conveyance, burglaries, and stolen vehicles. And we look to see if they were committed by juveniles, if it was an increase or a decrease. So during the first year of JBATS, there was a decrease of 16% for conveyance burglaries and 15% for stolen vehicle offenses. In addition to that, we also had an unexpected success, which was a decrease of 16% of juveniles arrested. So we learned.
Bridget, we lost you if you're there. You there, Bridget?
Actual offenses. Yes, I'm sorry, I cut out.
Yes,
Can you hear me?
We can now. Yes, ma'am. You did cut
Okay,
out.
I'm on my work phone. I'm on my work phone and it just keeps cutting out. I'm not sure why. But so I'm not sure what you all heard, but our first year of success, we had a decrease of 16% of conveyance burglaries and 15% of stolen vehicle offenses. And we had an unexpected success of 16% of juvenile offenders arrested. So in this case, we noticed that if we focus on the offender, that we can also assist ourselves with having a decrease of crime, because we're paying more attention and changing the dynamics of that actual individual juvenile offender. So our first year was great. Our second year, unfortunately, we had a lot of issues and challenges due to COVID-19. The BOLD program said that they had limited communication with the participants and centers that they can actually assist with the classes for these individuals. There was a declined access to the partners that provide employment to these individuals. Then for the Florida Department of Juvenile Justice, their offices were closed. They could not have any physical contact. They did a lot of Zoom and FaceTime calls, which in actuality, they can answer a FaceTime from anywhere. They also had to do drive-ups to the youth home for the high-risk offenders. Their family had limited access to services, and we had to cancel court dates. So here with us, for GPD, we had an increase with our tough on 2 crimes. We had to do inadequate juvenile curfew checks because a lot of juveniles were displaced. A lot of juveniles were displaced due to them having to stay home. Their parents had to work, so they had to send them to other relatives to stay. So we could not do successful curfew checks in reference to that. And then we had the Record House Youth Academy, which they had attended issues, home visits, the same as the juvenile curfew checks, and a lot of transportation issues because you can't have as many kids on the buses due to the social distancing implements that was in place. So as I stated, we had challenges due to COVID-19, and that was shown during our tracking method. So we noticed that there was a 27% increase for conveyance burglaries and 57% increase for stolen vehicles. Our juvenile arrests went down. Again, that could be due to the fact that we couldn't do a lot of probation violations or anything. We couldn't actually go out due to the fact that we had this many juveniles, our social distancing and our COVID-19 implements that were in place. So the probation officers couldn't really do a lot of probation violations or anything like that due to the fact that they didn't even have contact with the juveniles. So this is my contact information. If you all have any questions, if you all wanted to extend from my presentation, just to hit on a couple of things that Chief Scott stated, I do have the numbers for last year in reference to the conveyance burglaries and stolen firearms. According to reports that we received last year, 108 firearms were stolen during a conveyance burglary last year. And right now, we're in the process of revamping JBATs. I went out on maternity leave in July. When I came back in October, I noticed that about, I would say 85% of my juveniles that were on our priority list were either went to the Department of Corrections or they were in the ASO jail charged as an adult. And that is a place in reference to them committing a violent offense or a felony offense, and they were charged as an adult. So that definitely has a play in reference to the firearms that were stolen from the conveyance burglary. So right now, I'm working with Lieutenant Marquita Brown to revamp JBATs to include violent offenses, because now it's extending more than just our conveyance burglaries and our stolen vehicles. We have juvenile offenders that are shooting up individual homes, individuals, and actually killing individuals. And I take care of the juveniles within our city limits and also Alachua County. I try to keep a track of all the juveniles in the county of Alachua. So in that retrospect, we're trying to change everything to have the violent offenses now included in JBAT. So the name will change in addition to our requirements in our review of crime. Are there any questions?
Mr. Chair, it's Gina.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't really have a question. I appreciate the presentation. I'm really struck by the number of families that COVID disrupted so much and how much that impacted juveniles and, just life in general. And I know the schools are struggling with the exact same thing. It's a really odd time. So I say keep up the good work.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. We're trying to get back into the swing of things. We used to have a meeting room full before COVID. Now everything we do is through Zoom and through Teams, and it's not the same. So trying to be innovative so that we can get our efforts back up. with the amount of crime decreasing in addition to the juvenile arrests. And so we're just trying to be innovative and focus on not only juvenile arrest and crime, but also providing them any type of social services needs that they may have. Because a lot of these juveniles that we encounter, I know for a fact we had one that we had the Heroes program. He very, very intellectual, all in all honor classes, was excellent playing sports. He played football, basketball, and soccer. But unfortunately, he lived in a household with several siblings, and his mom just did not provide any ambition and didn't for herself, I would say, because he was in a condition of a household where he had to provide for himself somewhat. And I remember him, trying to get efforts to go buy school clothes, and he would leave the Heroes program, he would go cut grass, and then when he go home, the mom would take half of that to pay a utility bill in the household. And that inadvertently caused him to do conveyance burglaries to try to get the money that was taken or to just provide from himself. So we have to realize that in some of these cases, it's not just about the crimes that are being committed, it's about their social services need as well in the household. And that's our main objective as well.
I do have a question. You may or may not have the number or the answer for it. How many JBAT students are still displaced from school since COVID?
Well, we didn't have any that were pretty much displaced from school. They were displaced from their household. So they had to go to a relative house because their mom still had to work. Some of them still had parents who had to work. So they will stay at a grandmother's or aunt or some family member's home at night. And that's when we perform our curfew checks. So as I stated, I've been out. I went to maternity leave in July, got back in October. So I'm still trying to get this back into the swing of revamping JBATs, because when I came back, like I said, over 85% of my list, they were already in DOC or ASO due to committing a violent crime or having a firearm or being in possession of shootings, anything like that. So that caused them to be charged as an adult. So now I'm trying to get my list for priority juveniles back to where it was and focus on the juveniles that we can assist, because unfortunately we can't help everyone, as far as we can't save everyone from a life of crime, unfortunately. But I'm trying to get a list back so that we can focus on the ones who will reap our services.
Thank you, ma'am. Are there any more questions?
Miss Sheila has a question for Miss Bridget.
Okay, go ahead, Miss Penny.
Hi. Yeah, I can tell that you have a passion for this. I would like to know how many youth were arrested last year. I saw the presentation that GPD gave to the City of Gainesville Commission, asking for more money to work with youth. I am really disturbed that 85% of the people that you were directly supervising ended up in jail. And I'm just wondering if anybody can say how many youth were arrested last year.
It was, well, let me say this in reference to my list. It's not a long list. It's probably about 20 to 25 juveniles. So it's not an extensive list. So 85% of the 20 to 25 juveniles that were on my list were the ones that were actually in the DOC or in the ASO jail. And that includes juveniles also live in Alachua County, not just in the city of Gainesville. In reference to juvenile arrest, we had about 130, I think it was, juvenile arrested last year.
Does that include the 85% of your caseload? I mean, 85% are a lot of kids that are in prison now. I'm just wondering.
So see, the 85%, I think you're getting confused in reference to the 85%. The 85% were the number of actual juveniles that we focused on. So when we have JBATs, we have a priority list. So that is only about 20 to 25 juveniles that we're focusing on at that time. So 85% of my list, which would be the 20 to 25 juveniles that was on my list, had moved on. And to keep in mind that these juveniles are the ones that are committing felony offenses. And I would say that due to the COVID restrictions, is the possibility that at this particular limit, I would say about out of the 25, I would say about 15 of those juveniles went to DOC or ASO. So it wasn't 85% of the juveniles in our county or in our city on my particular JBATS list is what I'm talking about.
I'm sorry. I did understand what you were saying. I knew it was 85% of the people. And I appreciate that COVID has made it hard for everything. I'm just wondering if the programs that are being funded, there's a way to ramp up even during COVID. I mean, there's things I do in person with a mask on, and I just feel terrible that these kids are, you know, I mean, when they're arrested, the police have masks on or whatever. That is still happening with GPD. So I do know the court system also has stopped doing a lot of referrals, that people are not being referred because of COVID. So I do appreciate it. Seems like you're passionate, and I hope that you can get back with more kids to help.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. I am very passionate about it. And to answer your other question, we had 129 juvenile arrests last year, which was a 78% reduction from 2013. So in 2013, we have 611 juvenile arrests. Last year, we had 129 juvenile arrests. And that's the reduction numbers that 78% reduction from 2013. So in reference to, like I said, the JBAT started in 2019, COVID started basically in 2020. So we saw how it can work. Our first year, 2020, we got thrown a curveball. We got shut down. The whole country did. So by 2021, we were still trying to get everything back into place how it was. And then I went out on maternity leave. So here we are again, trying to get everything back in place, so we can try to see the success that we had originally.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have one more question. Out of that 78%, how many of those arrests were replaced by civil citations?
So I can pull that information for you. I was just prepared to present the JBAT information. So in reference to the civil citations, I can pull the numbers while we're still on the meeting if you want, and I can let you know how many civil citations were issued last year. But this is the numbers that was provided by our DMC coordinator before he actually resigned. Will Helvosa, he retired again. So these numbers were provided by him, and I can check to get the civil citation numbers for you in reference to the replacement of how many received them last year.
Okay, it's no rush, but thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. No problem.
Fareed.
Yes, ma'am.
So just so you know, for the teen court, which is the civil citation program for juveniles in Alachua County that is run by the Alachua County Sheriff's Office.
Okay.
When Bridget gives you those numbers, just for context, we are the #1 agency to provide referrals to the teen court program. We provide the most out of all the other agencies. We do that consistently year after year because it is emphasized for us from beginning to end, including our policy changes not to arrest anyone under 13 for things. We're very strong in that area. So I do know that. I speak with Mr. Pelham every now and again, and he tells us we're doing okay.
And that's why I was curious, because I'm sure it wasn't a 78% decrease in crime. But I know, I also know GPD is leading the way with the civil citation program. So that's why I was curious to know.
Yeah, the 78% decrease is from 2013 until last year. So
Yes, ma'am.
it's an 8-year overview.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, are there any more questions?
Can I ask, but what agencies do you mean? It's Captain Kernick now, right? I can't keep up with all your promotions. Captain?
So chief inspector, but it's just Jamie too, Miss Sheila. So that's,
Okay. Yeah, what agencies? Are you talking about local or?
yes, ma'am. The ones that provide that, that the Alachua County Sheriff's Office accepts into the juvenile, that program, into teen court. But we can get you those numbers. They send them to us regularly, along with, I think we sent an updated arrest report in December, Sheila, from the one that we sent before. It's just because we didn't meet in December, I don't think we went over that that arrest stuff, the misdemeanor arrest that we talk about all the time. We won't have time today, but we maybe plan that for the next meeting, and I'll get an update and ask Ms. Smart to come back.
That'll be perfect.
Thanks.
Chief Inspector Kernick,
Hi.
floor is yours, man.
Okay, so we have 12 cases that were requested from the Police Advisory Council. Y'all sent information back to Ms. Holt. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each of the cases, but on a briefer scale. And then I'm going to leave our two most, I will say the ones that have the longest reports for the last. So if you have any questions, I'm going to stop after each one and just ask, does anyone have questions? And then I can go into more depth on each of the cases. So let me start off very quickly. This is case 20-008. This involved Officer Leonard Rivers. The allegation was an unauthorized pursuit and leaving the scene of a crash. The incident occurred January 25th of 20. If you're asking me why we're talking about this in January on the 26th of 2022, it's because Officer Rivers was deployed to the military. So those investigations suspend, and that's why that happened. The individual that brought the complaint to us was a third party that didn't witness any of the incident. And basically the complainant or the person that was told to us that was supposed to have the information did not want to cooperate with the investigation. We reviewed all the body worn camera and all of that other thing and everything involved with it, including the AVL for a vehicle, and interviewed the officer himself, and the complaint was unfounded. Does anyone have any questions? Which means the act did not occur according to our policy. Not seeing any hands raised. If you just raise your hand, then I'll know. We'll go to the next one. This is case 21-012, Justin Evans. The case is from March 9th of 21. And basically it's a productivity workmanship. So that's an E3 and a willful wanton violation. This case involves that Officer Evans did not secure a firearm that he had collected, and it had stayed in his vehicle for some time. Now, just to be aware, during this investigation, Officer Evans left our agency. Doesn't mean that we don't complete the investigation, but we'll tell you the findings of it. And it was not due to this, it was due to, just moving on and going to do something else. So we sustained this violation. It was an E3 Rule 13. He got a written warning, and he also was sustained on a Rule 25, which is willful wanton. And that would have been an employee notice with 24 hours off or 3 days off. And that's the recommended discipline. So even though he wasn't here to serve the discipline, we still complete the investigation all the way through, and we come to a finality. Does anyone have any questions on Officer Evans' investigation? It was just lack of putting evidence up. That's really that. Next one is 21-019. Involving Corporal Rappa and these were detectives, Mr. Ronald Pinkston. It was 5/13 of 21. It was a violation of investigative procedures. And it was an investigation that involved an individual that was arrested. The allegation involved failure to provide or look at important information related to the investigation that would have proved innocence of the individual who was arrested. The state attorney's office reviewed this case, including all the probable cause, all the evidence. This was involving a shooting with multiple guns. I think 4 guns were identified, if I remember correctly, in this being involved in this one incident. But the state attorney's office reviewed it and said that the detectives had probable cause to arrest this individual. So this complaint was unfounded. And so that review from the state attorney's office, of course, is independent of our review in a separate agency completely. So we, since they are the head law enforcement purveyor of prosecution in our jurisdiction, their opinion of cases weighs considerably in our investigations. So does anybody have questions on Corporal Rappa and Detective Pinkston? No hands being shown. The next case is 21-25. This is for Corporal Crystal Schrammick. This involved an inefficiency in job performance involving a domestic investigation where in a domestic and child abuse investigation where an arrest was made. There were some allegations of her being acquainted with the actual complainant in the investigation because they come from the same location. Some impropriety because, they believe she's from a location, they're from a location, and she was showing favoritism. We completed the investigation, and this one was also unfounded. Does anyone have any information? Although in this case, I do remember Corporal Schrammick was very friendly and spent a lot of time with the individuals, with the complainant doing a very good investigation. There's no signs or implications of any showing any favoritism. Probable cause exists that and moving forward. So this one was definitely unfounded. No questions? Okay. 21-26. This is Sergeant Jaron Griffin. Rules of conduct. This involves an individual that lives close to the sergeants and brought forward some allegations involving, the sheriff's office was involved, realizing that this officer and this individual live outside the jurisdiction of the Gainesville Police Department. The ASO investigated several instances and no violations, no criminal acts, no anything was found on the part of Sergeant Griffin. Therefore, this is unfounded. Another agency investigated these, not us. So that's also helpful for transparency. The next one is involving 21-27, June 15th of 21. Officer Zayas, Officer Dustin Johnson, and Officer Justin Perot, property and evidence. We had an individual who was taken into custody by our officers, and the allegation was that they disposed of her prescription medication, which she could not afford to replace. The allegation involved Officer Zayas and Officer Johnson, who were directly involved in the decision to actually dispose of the medication in a medical facility, in a medical place, which they went into the hospital and did that. But our policy states that we will keep property of individuals, and basically they did not. We replaced this nice young lady's medication and made sure that we remedied the situation. But Officer Zayas, and Officer Johnson disposed of this medication. Johnson threw it out. Zayas told him the jail wouldn't take it. It's kind of, a little simple, but they're both newer officers. The allegation was sustained for Zayas and Johnson, and they were given a written warning and instruction on the property and evidence policy to make sure that they don't repeat this behavior. And Justin Perot was unfounded because he really had little involvement. He was just the third officer on the scene. Does anyone have any questions about 21-27? Yes, Miss Sheila.
So I'm sorry, I am not caught up because I know how busy everyone is, but this was a lot of cases to go through since we got them on Monday. So I've only read thoroughly up to this point. So there was another case where that I think you talked about, but we didn't go into it, where a police officer didn't secure evidence with guns and stuff.
That's Justin Evans. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, Evans. And we didn't talk about it, but there seems to be an issue. And I am concerned that, and I know that y'all counseled them, but I don't understand how Evans could have, when I went through, it was really long. It appears as if he had never submitted any evidence for anything, and it seems to have not been caught before. And so I'm wondering if there's an issue there. And then the last thing, a couple of meetings ago, reading through this, the Gainesville Code of Conduct seems really insufficient, like Officer Ortiz.
So
That case,
Can we
it seems insufficient. The policies are too broad for the special job and circumstances that police face. You know what I mean? I mean, to say, I mean, the evidence, it's evident. Nobody else collects evidence, but stuff like whether they're following directions. And so when they're given, I don't want anyone to get in trouble, but when they're given discipline, like AC Pierce didn't serve a suspension because y'all need him too much. It seems like the policy should be more fine-tuned for the police department, is what I'm trying to say. And the issue of those guns being in his trunk, he says, is really disturbing.
So, Sheila, let me address Justin Evans. We'll save Ortiz for the end, and then we'll talk through E3. Okay. Like I'll do that. So Justin Evans, the information that led us to him not putting the firearm up is that a couple of days later, forensics went in looking for that firearm to determine if it was involved in an incident, and they couldn't find it. So then it came to our attention, and then we did a log, right? We see one issue. We're going to make sure that there aren't other issues that officer is dealing with, that there's other evidence that's not put up. It's just part of the investigative process. So they're very long, the investigations on those cases, because we want to be very thorough in the evaluation of what we're seeing and how we're presenting that information in the investigation. But he would have been severely disciplined if he still worked with us. And those other instances would have continued to, like, we would have had more internal affairs reviews as we went through them. But he's no longer an employee. We sustained the ones that we had, and we coupled them all together. So he would have been significantly disciplined, and that time off is hard on people, and I will say that. Now the difference is that Officer Zayas and Officer Johnson are newer officers. Justin had more time on, but besides that, it wasn't evidence that they discarded. It was someone's property that should have just been put up into our property and evidence. And in the discussion with that, realize that every time we go to discipline someone, it goes in front of an IA panel. And what that involves is the assistant chief, 2 captains, myself, an HR director, the commander in internal affairs, and we vote on what we think is the fair and equitable discipline for each of these, with the guidance of E3, which is the rules of conduct. And basically what we do with that is we take the totality of circumstances. There are times we'll actually, pull up that body worn camera, watch the review of the incident, and look at the officers trying to discern what to do, in circumstances. And we use past precedents for what we've done in the past, and we try to stay consistent and fair. And that E3 rules of conduct that I provided, I don't know, a couple meetings ago, we can provide it again, is the baseline of guidance of, you know, where to start and how it falls. So it's not just one of us making the decision on the discipline. There are many people involved, including the HR representative who helps us navigate through that in past practice and kind of how things navigate out. So we're making sure we're being fair and consistent on all the cases. And that for us is very important because we want to make sure that it doesn't matter who you are, where you work in our agency, you're going to be treated the same if you have a similar violation. So that's kind of the, and
Can I just say, yeah, I get all that. I'm just wondering if there's an issue that Evans was able to keep that evidence. Seems like he never logged anything in, that it wasn't caught, and that, again, I don't want anyone to ever get in trouble for anything. Again, that AC Pierce, you know, was supposed to be suspended, but he was needed. And I don't really care that he wasn't suspended, really. And I know that y'all go through a thorough thing. I'm just saying that I hope that everyone's turning the evidence in, especially if it's guns.
So we do checks and periodic checks and audits of the evidence room. And this has Mr. Evans, you know, I would have to look and see in his total history. I don't know his total history of his entire time at the Gainesville Police Department. I can research that for you, and get back to you, Sheila. But let me get through the other investigations, and then we'll end up talking about Chief Pierce's investigation as we go through and do that. Is that okay? Okay. All right.
Let's get through all of these cases and let's keep the questions to the individual cases, and then we'll discuss the totality in the end.
Okay. Okay, so here's 21-30. This is Justin Perot. This is from July 9th of 2021. It's a violation of our drug-free workplace and also a violation of our take-home car policy. During a random drug test, Officer Perot tested positive for an illegal substance. And of course, this was upon serving, you know, going out to talk to Officer Perot. We found out that he was taking his car to his home, which is just outside of Alachua County, and that's prohibited per our policy. So that's why you see the drug violation and the violation of take-home policy. This was sustained. He got an employee notice, a 40-hour suspension, and also is on, you know, working through our employee assistance program and other things that are necessitated by our drug-free workplace program. Does anyone have any questions about Officer Perot? Okay. 21-33. This is Sergeant Nick Ferrara, 7/16 of 21. He was involved in a crash, motor vehicle crash. This one was, at fault. It was sustained. In our policy involving vehicle crashes, we actually have a matrix which, sets up criteria for discipline for this. So a lot of these are set. In this particular case, he had no previous events in the past 24 months. It's a violation of E3 Rule 23. It was sustained. He got an employee notice and he lost his take-home car for 2 weeks. So he had to leave his car at the station and lose that benefit. That's just part of our scale. And he got assessed 3 points. If he gets in another crash, it will assess higher, and the take-home car privileges and the discipline rises. So if this happens again and again and again. That's what we have. Does anyone have any questions on Sergeant Ferrara's crash? Okay. Realize that this is like multiple months of cases. So I know we're doing a lot, but please bear with me. This is 2148 involving Officer Ripley. It was on 10/20 of 21. This is an excessive use of force case in that circumstance. The individual made some allegations that during an arrest that he was dragged and hogtied and excessive force was used. Our officers had their body worn cameras on. The information and the allegation of that information was incorrect. They utilized all the techniques that we are trained to. There was no misuse of force. He was not dragged down the hallway. They did actually take him down an elevator so he wouldn't fall downstairs because he was refusing to be cooperative when he got put in a set of handcuffs. And so with that, this one is definitely unfounded. And so that's where that lands. Does anyone have any questions on the Officer Ripley case? Okay. This one is 21-34. This involves Assistant Chief Pierce. It involves discourtesy. This is from 7/9 of 20. Chief Inspector Campos conducted this investigation. And the allegation was sustained in E3 Rule 18, and it was a written warning. It involved a meeting with a tow company and an interaction that the assistant chief had with an outside person. Sheila, I know you had questions on this, but did you get through reading all of it, and what can I answer if you need me to?
He's high up in the organization, and if street officers are having to serve suspensions, then, there should be some, I don't know, it's discourtesy that I'm concerned about always with the public. And I'm sure he's embarrassed about it. I hope that's enough that he can, since he had been cautioned by Chief Jones before.
Okay, is there any direct question that I can answer about this one, or?
No, I'll make a comment at the end. Keep going.
Okay. All right. So the next two are the two largest cases within the case file. This one is Officer Lionel Ortiz. This was on April 22nd of 21. This, there were several allegations. This is a very complex case. If I'm not mistaken, it's 39 pages long. If anyone had a chance to get through all of it. This case involved an interaction with Officer Ortiz and an individual who had been arrested for a DUI. Officer Ortiz stopped the individual and then proceeded to engage the individual in an realizing that the individual arrested was the suspect in a crime, and Officer Ortiz ended up being involved with this individual. There were several violations, including our E3 Rule 25 wanton and sustained. We had a Rule 21 of untruthfulness because he did not explain he didn't show her portions of the video, which we have evidence that he did. And an E3 Rule 19, and that was also sustained for improper conduct. He did not activate his camera when he was out with this individual on a second occurrence, and he was on duty, which is prior policy. He also let the victim, the suspect who was arrested for the DUI, review body-worn camera evidence, which is against our policy. We don't show anyone evidence, especially without going through the proper records request submissions. That's another violation. And he let the victim review in-car camera footage. So it is a very unusual case because in the beginning, the suspect is the DUI person, and then the officer is the victim, and then it switches. So it goes back and forth on the case, but he had an improper conduct and tried to establish an improper relationship with this individual. And this case was large enough. He resigned in lieu of termination. He is no longer an officer with us at the Gainesville Police Department. And this case, because of the untruthfulness part, will be forwarded to the improper conduct, of course, to the Criminal Justice Standards and Training Commission. So does anyone have any questions about this case? Okay, the last one is the SWAT at Colliers. This is from June 2nd of 2021. The allegations, I think everybody is very familiar, misuse of the SWAT team, checking on the policy and all of that. We did a thorough review of all our policies and procedures that we have established for SWAT. It did go through a multi-level approval process from the detective through the detectives division to the Patrol Support Bureau, who is the SWAT commander, to the SWAT commander's captain within that organization, that part of the organization, in order for it to be approved for that warrant to be served. We reviewed all the video, the allegation of being detained in handcuffs for hours and some other things that had come through the media and different things. Those were all proved to be untrue. The individuals were detained close to 15 minutes in handcuffs and then allowed to go into a conference room inside of the building and hang out just until the end of the warrant was served. The timeline was not as long. It was just a few hours. We have all the body worn camera. We have, and everything from that incident. So there was no misconduct on the part of the SWAT process. There was no misconduct on part of any officer that was on the scene, detective that was on the scene. And we followed all the protocols that are necessary at the Gainesville Police Department for that. The best, the information that it was provided to us, we definitely looked into everything, watched body worn camera, reviewed everything, reviewed the policy. In the intermedium, we actually added a layer of SWAT approval when we serve a search warrant, and it now is in the policy and goes to the assistant chief of police. And if that person is unavailable, it will go to the chief of police himself to add a layer, another layer to approve a search warrant. It's also a very long case, and I could go into more, but I can ask for questions or things that anyone wants to talk about with that investigation.
For what they're going to be going over?
Yeah, she's finishing up now. Are we about ready? I can listen to this out there.
Hey, Greg Robeson, I can hear you.
Oh, then again, sorry about that. I didn't know I was not on mute. My computer had issues. I apologize.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Greg, I should introduce Greg Robeson. He's one of our city auditors. I'm sure he's here to talk about our body worn camera audit if he had a moment. So, okay, Fareed, I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Mel. Thank you, Mel. Mr. Robertson, did you have something to present to us or to discuss with us?
No, sir. I'm just here listening in.
Okay.
We sit from the auditor's office. We sit on various councils or just listen in to see if there's anything that we can add to our risk base when we set up our audit programs for the year.
Got you. Well, thank you, sir. And thank you as well, Chief Inspector.
Yeah, and Fareed, I will. I know there is part of, and I apologize, different committee, street lighting and vegetation. I'm part of that committee on a citywide level. And we've completed a report and we'll be presenting to PAC in the next few meetings. So it will be from that organization and not from Greg. I'm sorry, my bad.
Oh, you're fine. Were there any other questions regarding I?
No, no, I didn't have any general questions. I mean, I think they all pretty much spoke for themselves, and certainly we can, ask questions. And I do appreciate the addition of the additional layer on the SWAT process. I think that's actually going to possibly prevent something similar happening. My actual question is about the take-home policy for city vehicles. And it's been a long time since I've worked for the city. So is it the officers can take home their vehicles if they live in Alachua County, or take them to the border?
So during the time that this violation occurred, our policy said that the Alachua County, if you live within Alachua County, you can take your take-home car home. He lived over the border in another adjacent county,
Okay.
and was taking his car home. So that's the difference. But right in January, in the beginning of January, the commission signed a contract that allows officers to now take their vehicles home, as long as they are within a 35-mile radius of the station. So that may include Marion County. That
Right. Oh, it will.
now, and it's a benefit, Ms. Gina, and the reason that we're doing that is for recruiting, retention, and keeping officers. Other agencies do it throughout the state, and it's definitely something that we think is good. And Chief Scott.
Yeah, I want to add that we also require that they compensate the city for the extra gas, so they pay a stipend to use those cars outside
Okay.
that. So if it's outside the county.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm curious. I was thinking about it not from a naggy rule point of view, which I do manage a giant fleet at UF, so I'm in the state rules all the time, and I can come up with a lot of good scenarios. But to me, the new world order in recruitment and hiring is looking at different incentives to do this. And honestly, if something like this can make a difference, it's worth the investment. And it's just things that may not have mattered as much X years ago could really make a difference now in a different light. So that's it. That's my only question and comment. Thank you.
Are there any other member questions or comments? And we didn't go over it. Are there any questions from the general public or comments? Okay. Well, I believe that wraps up our meeting for tonight. Deborah, do you have the next date for us yet?
It's on the agenda
Is it?
if she's not answering.
It's on, it's February 23rd,
Okay.
which, well, I'll figure out my plan. That's a million years away. So I'll let you know.
Okay. If we're permitted to, it'll probably be another workshop. Just because this virus right now is so contagious. I'll get with Deborah and Chief Inspector Kernick and find out how many workshops we're permitted before we have to go back in person.
Sure. And I think there's advertisement for another member or two also. So I think that could help our quorum, but I agree on that.
There is, I think it's due the end of the month, the advertisements. And everyone, because of COVID, wipe off your screens when we're done.
All right. Well, that wraps it up. Meeting adjourned. Everyone have a good night.